I am here today with Jadon Moerdyk, who's reporting live from Cape Town, South Africa. And he's with Remodelboom, which is a company that has achieved incredible results for a number of Tony Hody training and consulting clients. They are the outsourced solution to rehash, asset recovery, as some of us refer to it. They're doing the follow-up on unsold projects, and they have a systematic approach to this. They have technology, they have a team of over 40 people, they have the scripting, they've got it down to a science. And as I mentioned, they've gotten some incredible results. We'll get into some case study and who you've been working with shortly, but I want to welcome you to the show, Jadon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tony. Yeah, excited to be here.
So I want to get right into it because, rehash is a sensitive topic for a lot of remodelers. Some are doing it, some are not, some are following up in a variety of ways. There's so many different ways to follow up in this day and age. You can do it, over the phone, you can do it via text, via email. And so a lot of people think with all those channels that are available to us that, there has to be a way for them to accomplish it on their own. But not everybody is getting great results. I mean, what percentage of companies do you feel have a rehash program in the remodeling industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. All of our clients have their own rehash program. Everyone, a big thing before clients work with us is they don't really believe that we're going to be able to produce the results that we do produce because they all say they have their own rehash process, right? But when you say, when you ask me, what percentage of companies have a rehash process, in your head, it's probably not that many because of the level of sophistication is just so low. But they all have rehash processes. They just aren't very good. That's
right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that candid response because, you're right. I mean, we go into home improvement companies on a daily, weekly basis, and we work with them and we ask, what is your process for X? Do you have a process for Y? And they say, yes, we do. And then you start to peek your head under the hood and you're a little shocked at some of the missing pieces and so forth. But yeah,
it gets difficult, when especially because we can only work with the very, very sort of large companies. When you get that sort of lead influx, it's just like it gets really hard to have a really good process to manage that.
Sure.
Yes.
But what's the upside? Why is it worth it? I mean, what is the potential for a company that's not doing rehash effectively? What kind of results can people realize?
Yes. So I would say there's probably at least 10 to 20% of lost revenue just on rehash processes, like kind of minimum. If you've got a really good rehash process, you could quite easily convert at least 10 to 20% of the leads that never converted in the first place. It takes a lot of work, but like that, if you got it completely dialed in, you can achieve those kind of numbers. Yeah.
If a company's doing $1 million a month in revenue, they could stand to generate another $100,000 to $200,000 just
for sure.
More efficient, follow-up rehash protocols, things of that nature. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they fix nothing else in the follow-up process, what would you recommend? I mean, is it scripting? Is it just doing it? I mean, what is it that you think is the biggest eye-opening thing you see?
Okay, so I would say it's a couple things. So the first one is most companies, they're only really calling. They're not doing any email or texting. I would incorporate multi-touch approach. The other thing I would do is, the big one is, why do guys not turn into customers? It's mainly the pricing objection, right? It's like, the price is just too high. And then when they do the rehash, there's not much of like a reason why that customer should really come back. So if there is an opportunity for them to lower the price, they shouldn't just tell the homeowner that, oh, hey, we can give a discount on the project, because that it sounds kind of sketchy, because why wasn't that the first price in the first place, right?
Sure.
Like, why are you now discounting? And what it does is it essentially incentivizes the homeowner should just wait a little longer, because if they don't move forward now, then maybe the price is going to dip even further later on, right?
Yeah, that
So
unintended consequence. Yeah.
exactly. So I think the big thing would be like, if you're going to reduce the price, which would be the biggest lever that you can pull to get someone that wasn't interested, it needs to come with a believable reason as to why you're lowering the price, and usually something that the homeowner needs to do in exchange. For example, let's say the bathroom or whatever it was 15K, and you're doing the rehash, and you're like, hey, we were able, the team is basically, we've what we could do is we could do a special offer where we bring it down to 13K if you don't mind recording a before and after video, or giving us an honest Google review, or leaving a sign in your yard. Since that's what the current special is this month, something that like does sound believable, that gets them to be like, okay, this is a real believable reason as to why they're lowering the price, not just because this wasn't the original price in the first place.
Right. Yeah, what a novel concept, right? Approaching it with
exactly.
With some credibility, right?
Yeah. So
no,
I would say the big one is just like giving a very believable reason as to why you're offering that special or that offer, so that they don't feel like you were scamming them in the first place, or like you really sketchy with the prices.
Yeah, belief is everything. It's trust, right? I mean, that's what we're aiming for. And if we didn't sell them the first time, it could have been money, of course. But it also, there was some form of, of insufficient trust. So the last thing you want to do is compromise that even further. And so, you have to have your story straight. You have to have your offer well crafted. And I think that's really sound advice. So let me ask you this. I mean, a lot of companies are allowing their salespeople, permitting their salespeople, encouraging their salespeople to do the follow-up on their own. And, I have some thoughts around that. But what have you seen when it's just left in the hands of the sales force to do their own follow-up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's kind of like a tandem approach. It shouldn't just be marketing, and it shouldn't just be sales reps. I think the sales reps have more of an advantage of doing rehash, when it's that first 7, 14, even 30 days after the actual in-home visit. But then after 30 days, it's like they're not really able to do it. Passing it on to the marketing team would probably be better, because they would have better processes in place. And then after 90 days, it's like, that's when I would recommend we kind of step in. But the other thing is, the sales reps can do a good job if there's a good process in place. Like, you can't just say to your sales reps, hey, you guys got to do the rehash, but there's no good processes in place, and they don't really know what they need to do, and nothing's being tracked, and the CRM is a bit of a mess. Because if it's just the marketing team doesn't really have as much knowledge of what the actual interaction was with the homeowner, which the sales rep can use in the actual follow-up, right? If they're calling them, email, if they're texting them, they know what the actual interaction was with the homeowner. They know the objections, they know how they kind of talk and interact, and they can incorporate all of that within the follow-up. Whereas the marketing, it's going to be kind of generic, right? Now, the same thing when they are working together, it's extremely important that the sales rep is aligned with what the marketing team is putting out to the public, right? If the marketing team has a crazy special and the sales rep is saying something different, then there's going to be that lack of trust again. When the actual homeowner comes and sees the sales rep again, and they're going to be like, oh, but I saw on the website you had this, like, why are you offering this? There needs to be very good communication between the two. Otherwise, there's going to be that lack of trust, and it's just going to be super ineffective. So I think it's a tandem approach, and I would probably do like 30-day sales rep, and then after that, it's the marketing.
Yeah, another thing I think is really relevant is that, it's not just a salesperson's, having the right system. That's important. Having alignment with marketing, and, that's important. A lot of people think that, some salespeople are lazy and they don't follow up. But, it's really, I think, more of a matter of bandwidth as well. We're asking them to go two different directions at once, right? We're asking sales people to travel all over their territory from one end to the other, have sufficient time to stop
Yep,
and eat and get gasoline and everything else. And where's the time for follow-up if they're truly, out there doing their best, in the sales role? And I think that's where at certain times a year they may have, you know,
for
time
sure.
in their schedule to do it. And then, other times a year, home show season, high season, you're just not going to have the bandwidth to get it done. And then comes that inconsistency again, where, at certain times a year we're following up effectively, at other times a year we're not.
Yes.
And it's not really a system, it's just kind of spontaneous.
Yes, I think if there isn't a system that's in place that's able to be in place, let's say the reps, like you just said, they're almost too busy to do follow up, and they know they're going to get better results from just running more appointments. Then it does become more of a marketing thing where it's like the sales reps just don't have the capacity to do the follow up because they're just so busy. And then there needs to be a really good process. So like if there was a process where, let's say every day at this time you're going to do follow up, or every Tuesdays and Thursdays for these 2 hours you're going to follow up on all the previous leads. Then that's a different story. But if there isn't even capacity to do that, then it's like you can't rely on the sales reps to actually, take that upon themselves. There needs to be a very good process in place.
And what happens when timing gets affected, when, we push that follow up out, when we kick the can on follow up and we're not doing it
Yeah.
until, weeks after, months after? I mean, what kind of impact does that have?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the emotional response just completely does. If someone's super high after the sales reps came in, they sold, they almost sold the job, and then, something came up. The longer you wait, the less interested that buyer is going to be, right? It's like kind of with anything. Like if you, I mean, I'm busy looking at a house or an apartment that I'm about to buy, and I was super emotionally like invested, straight after the meeting with the sales rep, and I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna put down the deposit, and then I literally slept on it, and the next day I'm like, I'm not too sure about this, and then a day went by, I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about it again. It's not as important, and this place doesn't look that nice. But if this sales rep, he called me straight after I left and say, hey, what are your thoughts? Like, let's get the deposit. The next day he was on it. It would have been a different story, right? Because I'm very emotionally invested at that exact time. And the longer you wait, you're just losing revenue the longer you wait, essentially.
Right. Yeah. So, there's kind of an age-old debate on whether salespeople should even be involved in the rehash process, just because, if you are compromising margins, if you are offering an additional incentive in the follow-up, that money has to come from somewhere, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you continue to pay the reps a full commission and then compromise with some sort of special offer or promotion? What do you see there? Is there a way to, keep the sales rep involved, or is it when it gets to a certain point after 30 days, is it something that goes back to the company, and marketing absorbs
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to the process. So, like, if the company can lower, let's say they can, offer additional discounts, and the margin is going to be lower, and they give the sales rep the opportunity to close them 7 days after actually viewing the homeowner, because they are able to do that within their own internal processes, then I think the sales rep has a better chance of actually getting them back on to the books, because they have that emotional kind of connection with them, and they have been to their home, they know how they talk, and they can actually like text them from their personal number and be like, hey, Susie, I know you said you wanted to think about it. We have this special thing, and that you just have to, you can get if you do this. But it kind of comes back down to the process and the communication between the marketing team and the sales rep. I mean, what do you think? What do you think would be the best?
It really, at some point, you have to have it go back to marketing, because if they didn't
Yes.
close the sale initially, there's always a chance they didn't do a great job, didn't have a great rapport, didn't build the urgency. And that's right out of the gates, even a few days after the fact, that's a consideration. If you get to a point where it's after a week, after a month, I definitely think, that's a company lead. The company paid for it. It
Yes.
wasn't converted. initially by the sales rep, and now we have some new costs in converting that lead that need to be taken into consideration. There's only
Sure.
so much, there's only, the pie can only be cut up so many ways before it becomes
Yes.
mush, so,
Yeah.
I definitely think that there's got to be some kind of a time limit. And, one thing that we see that's really fascinating about this is once the sales reps realize that it's no longer theirs, they start to treat those new fresh leads with a little
Mm,
more intensity, a little more
for
uh,
sure.
rigor, and we see higher conversions as a result of the fact that they've got to strike while the iron's hot. So
For sure.
that's definitely
Do you think
something
it
that
should be a 7-day, 14, 30-day, or not really for the sales rep at all to do the rehash?
that's a great question, and I think it really depends on your company culture and that sort of thing. However, I would say, the sooner the better. Rip the Band-Aid off. It's
Yeah.
never going to be something that your sales force welcomes, right? If they invested time and they invested energy,
Yes.
they invested their own gasoline into driving out and visiting with these people, they're never going to feel good about someone else taking the credit,
Taking over.
taking the
Yeah.
commission. So, at some point, you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and just say, hey, this is the policy. Again, there are new costs involved in getting these people back into the funnel, and those costs have to be reconciled somewhere. And so, in really getting the sales rep to understand how important it is for the company to recover that lost lead for the health of the organization. If we recover that lost lead, we can afford to buy you more fresh leads, more new leads, and we can get another yard sign out there. We can get another referral from this happy customer. We can get repeat business from this happy customer. So everybody wins when we get them back in the funnel.
Yeah.
You can't have a scarcity mentality where, it's me versus you, the company versus, the sales rep, or marketing versus the sales rep. So I think that's something that's really important to overcome in all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Cool.
have you seen any hybrid models yourself that, where, sales people, are doing a
Yeah.
portion of the follow-up, and then, your
Yes.
company's coming in after the fact?
Yes. I have seen some hybrid models. Usually it's the marketing team that's doing most of the rehash. But I would say, like, I think the best cadence would be like 7 days for the sales rep to just see if they can close them after the fact, and then after 7 days, hand it over to marketing. Um, Unless they currently, some companies have a killer 30-day process that the sales reps takes over, and I'm not suggesting changing that. But I think, like you said, if the sales rep knows that that lead is gold, and they got to strike while the iron's hot, then they don't have all this opportunity to rehash them, and they're probably not going to have the time either. Then just giving them 7 days, and then it's like, hey, after 7 days, if you're not able to convert them, then they're going back to marketing. I think that's a good cadence, and then marketing can take over, and there's no internal disconnect between the two. But I've seen companies do all kinds of things. I've seen companies where the sales reps do all the rehash, other companies where the marketing does all the rehash, hybrid. I do think 7 days at least for the sales rep is good, because they have that internal connection with the homeowner, and they can actually talk about things that the homeowner spoke about, that marketing would be a little bit more generic on. And that's what I've seen work pretty well.
Good. Good. Great feedback. So I'm curious, we talked a little bit about cadence. You just mentioned that. That's a buzzword that
Yeah.
kind of has me thinking about timing again. How quickly should we be getting back to unsold appointments? I mean, today is a day in the marketplace of speed, right? I mean, you're
Yes.
talking about people, that order a ride, and they summon it on their phone, and they can watch their chariot as slowly as it creeps up to
Yes.
their door. They can watch their DoorDash food show up. They can watch track
Yeah.
their Amazon packages. I mean, that's the world we live in. When it comes to follow up, I mean, how important is speed?
Yeah. I mean, speed is incredibly important. Imagine you get you chat to a homeowner and then they only hear from you a week later. I mean, they've already moved on. Maybe they've got more quotes, etc. So you really want to speak to them and do the follow up as soon as you can afterwards. Same day, and then the next day, and then the next day, and then as you kind of go, it's sort of gradually tapers off. But in the beginning, as soon as you've been into the house, I would say it needs to be immediate. Like the first week, it should be pretty consistent and constant.
You said same day, correct?
Yeah, same day. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
a really good advice. One thing we see in other parts of the business where we see significant impact is when installers are in the house and they're completing an installation. Before they leave the house, they're calling the office to make sure that everything's buttoned up, giving the
Yeah.
central command the opportunity to confirm that the satisfaction is there, to confirm that the cleanup is there, that everything is complete, and also, requesting an online review immediately while the
Yes.
installers are still at their home. And when we have a service technician go out after years may have passed, where they have warranty service to take care of something that needs to be resolved with the product, we're having the service tech call from the house again to make sure that it was completed to their satisfaction, that it was cleaned up, that
Yes.
the yard sign was planted in the yard. Just having all those controls. But by doing it same day before life starts to happen,
Yes.
we see an amazing impact. You're seeing that same phenomenon in rehash?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can, do same day, it's ideal. The sooner, the better. Also with us, like we work these massive lists. Usually the fresher leads are the ones that perform the best. So if you can even, do the rehash, same day, next day, after the same day as well, you should be getting better results for sure.
Great, great. So let's talk about some more best practices. Obviously, speed and timing and cadence are important. What about, the scripting? I mean, that's really important. That's the world
Yeah.
I come from, creating effective scripting at the front door, creating
Yes.
effective scripting in the home show, confirmation scripting. We live and die by a great script. What can you tell me about effective elements to a rehash script?
Yeah. So, it kind of depends on who's doing the rehash. I think if the sales rep's doing the rehash, they can incorporate some of those personal things that they were with the homeowner on. So if they know the homeowner was concerned about the timing, or they were concerned about the actual design, or if they're concerned about the price, whatever it is, you should be tying that back into the actual rehash when you are following up. And everything should be to try and combat those objections that they had in the follow up. And then if it's marketing, it needs to be as like most marketing companies they're doing very generic rehash, right? It's kind of like a blanket slate. Hey, we're doing this discount, or we have this offer, or there's nothing that's kind of believable. Which, I'm going back to what I was saying earlier. It's like if the marketing is doing it, there needs to be a believable reason as to why they're offering this certain change or this pricing discount, or if they say they can do the special thing for them, they need to have a believable reason as to why they're doing that, right? I would also say a big thing that companies do that I wouldn't do and I wouldn't recommend is just spamming the homeowner. It's like they haven't replied to your first 10 messages. They're probably not going to reply to your next one. So kind of mixing it up, doing some email, doing some phoning, doing some texting, and trying to incorporate some sort of value into those messages, right? So
Even direct mail, right? I mean, I know
even direct mail. I mean, send them a gift, if they were like super keen, and it's a big job, even sending them a personal handwritten letter, sending them a gift basket, those things go a long way, and it builds that trust. If a homeowner is deciding between, Bob's bathrooms and, Jerry's bathrooms, and they were exactly the same price and everything was great. And Jerry sends them a personal letter saying, hey, just wanted to let you know, if you have any questions or anything, give me a call. Here's my personal number. I'm pretty sure they're going to go with Jerry's bathrooms, right? So it's kind of like going the extra mile, thinking about what your competitors are doing, and then just going a level above that to actually secure the deal.
Yeah. And you've talked a lot about, credibility and believability of the offer. I really think that we get lazy in our,
Yes.
creativity when it comes time to thinking. We just need to put our thinking caps on. There are a number of things that we can ask of the homeowner to maintain credibility and say, hey, we've got this big giant yard sign. It's three times the size of our competitors, and it really gets results. Not everybody wants to put it out in their yard, but for those people who are on a budget, it's a palatable exchange. And so, there are things of that nature, a Facebook spotlight story where we're using before and after photos and video testimonials. But there are a number of things. We use something called a neighborhood chain letter, where that's where, we write the letter for the homeowner as a favor, but we write it in their voice. I'm not sure if you saw the trucks in the driveway or the big yard sign out front. However, we just had our bathroom remodeled and we couldn't be any more pleased. We chose Jerry's bathroom, and they, lived up to all their promises. So if you're planning on doing anything similar in the future, give them a call. We would strongly recommend. I like that a lot. And when it comes from your neighbor, that messaging is stronger than when it comes from a company. But getting creative in that fashion to have that credibility, that believability, and not just dropping your price because it's March Madness or because it's spring into savings sale. I think when people don't understand the why behind it or how you're able to reduce the price, credibility goes out the window or down the drain, depending upon whether you're in the window business or the bath business.
Yes. No, I like that a lot. And I mean, when you tell the homeowner, hey, homeowner, look, this sign, that's quite big. It's 3 times bigger, than the other guys. But, if you put this in your yard, I can knock off $500 because, I know it's a little bit of a big ask for you. That's super believable, right? It's like an actual exchange between them getting the actual discount that they want and you getting them, you getting some more PR and more, more people to actually see your company. So it needs to be believable. It needs to be a good reason as to why. You can't just say, hey, we're doing this discount or we're doing this special offer, like you just said, March Madness. Everyone knows that's, honky dory. It's not a real thing. But if as soon as it's believable and there's like a real exchange or something they have to do to get the discount or the promo, then the results just skyrocket because the homeowner actually believes this is something special.
Yes. Yeah, we do another one called a construction advisory, where we're advising the neighbors that we are going to start a project in the neighborhood. And, we use their address. And, so again, we're asking something of them. We're asking them permission. We're asking them for participation. Although we do most of the work, we do all the heavy lifting, they are consenting to this additional marketing. And I think it really goes a long way in both generating new leads and also, maintaining credibility in closing, rehash business.
Yeah, I like that.
So let me ask you this, how long does this fruit last on the tree? I know we talked about speed being really important, but I have heard some crazy stories about how some of these unconverted leads last a very long time in the pipeline. I have a client, K&P Remodeling in Tennessee, and another one, Showcase Remodeling in New Jersey, that you guys have worked with, and they're resurrecting stuff that I would have thought would have been dead and gone years ago.
Yes. So we go as far back as 4 to 5 years. Usually the further back you go, you kind of just get diminishing returns. When you think about it, if someone had a bathroom quote, 4 years ago, and they didn't move forward, and you really hammered them with rehash. They got other quotes, and they didn't move forward. There's a good chance that their personal circumstances change. Maybe they've gotten a promotion. Maybe they've got inheritance. Maybe the actual project is even worse than it was previously. Maybe they're just so sick and tired of looking at it every day. So people think that those leads are dead, and it's like forget about them. But if you really think about it, a lot of those people's personal circumstance has changed, where now they can potentially afford it, or they've gotten a divorce or whatever it is. It's quite a few years ago, and a lot can change in a few years. So yeah, we able to get a lot of juice from those old leads for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I've seen some statistics to where, the average closing in the home remodeling industry is, 33% nationwide when you survey countless companies in that. So that leaves, 67% unsold. And so
Yeah,
there's a lot of business that, will linger
tons
for years to come. So, I think it's you just keep working it, um, until kingdom come, right? That's what a database is for, is to
for sure.
continue to nurture and cultivate those opportunities. So
Yeah,
you guys are joining us at Lead Gen Expo in Cleveland. We're excited to have you guys there. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for remodelers to connect with you, to pick your brain, to learn how you do what you do, and getting great results for clients, and resurrecting old inquiries, recent inquiries alike. If they want to get in touch with you sooner, League Gen Expo is June 10th and 11th in Cleveland. If they want to get in touch with you sooner, how do they reach out to you, Jadon?
yeah. I'm super excited to be there. Firstly, it's going to be my first time there, so it's going to be great. They can just go to remodelboom.com, check us out. There's a little book about book a call over there. They can send me a personal email, jadon@remodelboom.com. But the easiest way would be remodelboom.com, boom as an explosion, and then just book a call there, and they'll speak to someone from our team.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to having you there, and again, getting some more insights from you. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think there's so much potential in our database, so much untapped potential in follow-up that remodelers just aren't taking full advantage of. And I know you guys can help. So I appreciate everything you do for Tony Hody training and consulting clients and the industry at large. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Cleveland.
Awesome. Me too. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. I see.